Hey guys, I'm Rebecca Liao. I'm co-founder and CEO at Saga. Are you guys hearing feedback, or is that just me? Yeah.
See, it might step up a little. It might help. Sometimes in these speakers, just make sure you get a little closer. That can do it.
Closer? Closer? Okay. All right, we'll go with it until it becomes unbearable. But thank you all for being here. It's good to see you. Early thank you to M13. For anyone who's here from the fund, you guys have been supporters of Saga for a long time, and we really appreciate it. They truly are a great investor. They have your best interests at heart, and they really do take hiring talent very seriously. So anyways, they're fantastic. So Saga, what do we do? Saga AI Labs does character agents. So we do AI agents that are based off of characters from gaming, from film, TV, from sports leagues, and we're starting to venture into general consumer brands as well. Now, you guys are aware of early iterations of this with Characters AI in particular, and it's not hard to take an iconic character and then slap it on an AI agent and try to give it a personality. But our agents have a very directed purpose, which is to form a synthetic relationship with users. So it's not purely for entertainment or gimmicky purposes. We are looking to actually build commerce for brands through the use of character agents. And we work particularly in building synthetic relationships with users and consumers across gaming, entertainment, and sports. So I mentioned the evolution of this particular space. Character AI, again, was an early purveyor of this. However, Character AI had very few, if no, licensing deals with the studios themselves. So they did not have relationships with the original IP owners. Their whole thing was fan fiction. And that served a purpose, but as we all know, sometimes when you're not working with the brand, you don't observe brand guidelines, these characters can go off the rails and there can be sometimes tragic consequences. So Character AI opened the door, but the space has evolved since then. So, sorry, a little cheeky here, but OpenAI had their partnership with Disney. Did not go anywhere because they decided to sunset Zora because it wasn't making any money for them. And the whole purpose of that partnership with Disney was to do short form video content via Zora. But having said that, the premise of it was still valid. If not short form video content, then maybe these character agents can be used for something else. So that's where we come in. So we are looking to turn these character agents into a monetization model. All right, in particular, what we're going after first is the $200 billion problem with user acquisition in gaming. User acquisition, community engagement, fan engagement, user engagement, whatever you want to call it, this is a problem across all consumer brands. It is the most acute in gaming. We also have a history of working with gaming studios, and so we're intimately aware of this problem, and we want to help our customers solve it. So the idea is, instead of doing massive ad buys with somebody like an AppLovin, you are instead deploying the power of your intellectual property across major social media channels in order to, again, form those synthetic relationships with users. And this is a way to drive much more effective organic user acquisition. All right, so I mentioned the social channels. Those are the main places where our agents live. So these character agents live on the official social handles of the titles or the studios, companies, et cetera, that we work with. And they are looking for new users. This is across all major socials. So it could be TikTok, Insta, those are the most commonly requested. Discord, more for community management, WhatsApp, Reddit, et cetera. So the agents live across these channels as though they were users themselves. All right. Oh, this is an older slide. Our interface doesn't look like this anymore, but it is enterprise ready. So the idea is this is primarily a B2B tool right now. And all the customers that we work with, they have to be able to track metrics in the same way as though this were a purely performance marketing tool. So they have to know at any given point what the conversion looks like, what impressions they're getting, what sort of user engagement they're getting across any one of these social channels. In terms of product roadmap, so what we have live right now, I would still consider to be the first generation of the platform. The next generation of the platform is being released at the end of the month. That starts to introduce a few things. It starts to introduce more of our own proprietary small language models. So our training for the agents is for a very specific purpose, which is to make sure that they have compelling personalities, that is true to the lore and the background of that particular character. But the characters are really there to ultimately hook the user and then sell things. So we don't need the inefficiency of a large language model in order to accomplish that, and our team has been hard at work developing those proprietary models. So the new platform is going to feature that. It's going to feature like more tracking for a dashboard and whatnot so that you can have easier handle on metrics, and it has a new way in which we crawl these social media channels in order to more effectively find new users. The goal of this platform is to get it to self-serve. So right now, all the agents are developed by Saga. We would like for it to be the case that any developer out there or any like more technical marketing team or creative team would be able to deploy these agents themselves and then deploy it across the social channels of their choice. All right, so some quick case studies here. Very first agent we ever released was for the game Trivia Crack, which is the largest trivia game in the world. 800 million downloads over the course of its lifetime. Its main character is Willie. He is a trivia wheel. He's chaotic and spastic and very knowledgeable because he comes from a trivia game. So when he's crawling Insta or X or any other social that he lives on, he's interacting with users. He's also eventually encouraging them to download the game, participate in any sort of campaigns that Trivia Crack is running, buy any sort of battle passes or in-game assets. Ultimately, this is a tool for agentic commerce. Obviously, that is not what is emphasized when the agent is actually interacting with the user, but that is ultimately the purpose of these agents. All right, and I mentioned earlier that we were branching away from gaming. So gaming is definitely our bread and butter. It is our home base. And servicing gaming studios, particularly in this environment, is a never-ending mission. Having said that, we have attracted the attention of sports organizations. We are working with a major sports league. That'll get announced in a couple months' time. This is a little broader. It's not just user acquisition because everybody is a fan of this particular sports league. So this is about fan engagement. It's about user engagement, trying to, once again, increase that LTV of your user base. All right, some high-level overview of the architecture behind our character agents. So you can see here that it's not a super complicated structure. However, the way that we have utilized all of these language models is we want to do it as efficiently as possible and in as modular a way as possible. You're training a personality at the end of the day. So the purpose of the LLMs that we use is really just to divvy up tasks to sub-agents and our small models. That way, if anything should get wrong with the agent, if there needs to be something that's tweaked about the personality, if something's not quite right about this agent, it's a very creative thing, right? It can be done in a very modular way with the way that we have architected this system. Happy to talk about this more in detail after all the presentations are done. All right. In terms of traction, this is also an old slide. We, to our knowledge, are the only product in the market that does this. And one of the key hires that we made about a year and a half ago headed up all of gaming BD for Samsung. So knows everybody in the industry, and we have him to thank, honestly, for all the relationships that we have, all the customers that we've been able to get. But you probably recognize some names up here, particularly if you are from the gaming world, probably Fun Plus. They make State of Survival, Foundation the Game, which is based on the Apple TV show. Wildlife, they make Tennis Clash, which is a game that we also work with, and actually debuting some tennis agents for Wimbledon. Really looking forward to that. So it's been exciting. Telltale Games, they are the preferred partner for Warner Brothers for any sort of prestige PC console game. So a couple very exciting titles there. They just announced Wolf Among Us, the remaster for the end of the year, and then Wolf Among Us 2 for next year. Both titles that we're working with. So it's been a fun ride. It's been a fun ride, but obviously so much more to come. So with that, I guess I will hand it to the next team. But I'm around, and I think my co-founder and VP of engineering just arrived. So yeah, we're happy to meet you guys after. Thank you.
One quick thing. You're hiring, right? Yes?
Yes, we are hiring. We're absolutely hiring. So hiring AI engineers, but also starting to hiring out the product team as well. You can see that the platform itself is really product feature heavy. And there are many directions in which we want to take this. So yeah, come find us after.
Cool. Thank you so much.
Okay. Hi, everybody. Thanks for coming. So fair warning, I am not a founder, nor do I have a technical background, so we're going to do our best to go through here. But Allocate is a private markets infrastructure. So to give a little bit of background about what exactly we are trying to tackle, Private markets are projected to double to 32 trillion by 2030. The founders' backgrounds are Samir Kaji and Hannah Yang. So Samir got his start in the dot-com era at SVB. Ultimately, he transitioned over to First Republic Bank in 2008. There, he was responsible for really helping the emerging managers emerge. So this is the time that Andreessen Horowitz was around and getting off their start. And over the course of about 20 years, he realized there are two primary problems with private markets. One is unless you know a guy who knows a guy, it's exceptionally difficult to get into these really strong deals. Second thing is even if you do know somebody and you are able to provide access, the infrastructure laying it out is lackluster to say the least. So it was actually born from Samir's own issue in that Samir is personally invested in over 80 funds. Traditionally speaking, that means he's got 80 different K1s, which are tax documents for those who don't know, and he's got 80 different portals that he needs to log into to track his private market infrastructure. So Allocate was actually born in the sandbox environment at First Republic Bank. Ultimately, it was spun out in 2021 because, unsurprisingly, it's pretty difficult to build a quality startup in the infrastructure and the bureaucracy of a large bank. So, same thing again, it's the projections are continuing to double, as are the number of funds. So, where does this come into play? Allocate has 3 lines of business. One is going to be the curation side. So curations are what you would imagine them to be, i.e. I am a high net worth individual. I don't really have access to Silicon Valley. I don't really know who to talk to get into these top funds. I don't really know what the top funds are. Where do I go? Allocate would be the answer. We act as an RIA, which means, for those who don't know, it's a registered investment advisor, which means that we have a fiduciary responsibility to our clients, which means that we do not have a pay-to-play marketplace. It's not anybody can be onto our platform. We meet with about 700 fund managers a year. We admit roughly 30 to 40, which averages out to about a 5% acceptance rate. Those were last year's numbers. We are already on track to meet with well over 1,000 this year. And again, we're probably going to maintain that 30 to 40 number. So we're extremely selective about who we accept onto the platform. Our main clients on the LP side are going to be, traditionally speaking, high net worth individuals. But as we have continued to grow, we have realized that the larger, say, boutique wealth advisory firms, so I am an advisor, I manage about $1 billion AUM. I don't really know Silicon Valley that well, but I have all these clients that want to invest in private markets. What do I do? Because again, in order to be successful in this, you need to be meeting with this number of LPs, these number of GPs, and many people just don't have the infrastructure or the time or the bandwidth to be able to do so, and so they can kind of outsource their due diligence to us and just say, okay, great, this is on the Allocate platform. We know that these guys are solid. Wonderful. Line of business number 2 is going to be the fund solutions, which is going to be more catered towards the GPs. So for example, I am raising a $100 million fund. $50 million are going to be small checks because it's going to be a friends and family. So people who I have previously invested in who are now founders and successful and want to turn around and invest their capital back into my fund, great. But I don't really want to deal with 100 different LPs. So what you can do with Allocate is do what's called a feeder vehicle. So we can spin it up, and rather than having 100 different LPs, you have one LP, which is Allocate, and then we can turn around and distribute the funds accordingly, distribute all the KYC, all the AML, all the kind of the banking bureaucracy that you don't really want to manage as a fund manager. The third is going to be Insights, and Insights is our tech stack. So primarily what that is focused on is the look-through visibility. So, for example, if I am invested in, we'll say Anthropic. Say I'm invested in Anthropic, and then I'm also invested in 3 other funds who are invested in Anthropic. What does that look like to me as a total exposure? And that really doesn't exist at the moment. So those are the 3 lines of business. But what that means in practice is, say, for example, you are a GP. And you have this friends and family vehicle that you want to establish, great. But then also Allocate can provide our own LP base, and we can provide additional capital, as well as the infrastructure, as well as the reporting, as well as the visibility. So these are the 3 lines. And so from end-to-end play, it's a full circle. Okay, so this is a quick snapshot. So importantly, we actually just updated our operating system last week, I believe. So this is what it looks like now. And again, this is really what I've just mentioned, which is, okay, I have a cap call due in 4 days. What does that mean for me? Am I fully liquid enough in order to do so? What does that mean over the next 6 months? What are the cap call structures going to look like? What's the reporting going to look like? What is performance of the overall fund? And then again, from the GP side, okay, where are my investors in the process? So for those who don't know, there's a lot of bureaucracy that is involved in onboarding LPs to the funds, right? So you need to do know your customer information. You need to make sure that you're fully validating who they are, their background information, their bank accounts, et cetera. We will do all of that for you, but in order to do so, you obviously want to have the visibility in order to track it. And so this is what the tax stack is going to provide for the GP side. Okay, so the team, we are currently 83 employees. We're growing very quickly. We hired over 40 people last year, I believe, so we've nearly doubled in size. 2/3 of those are going to be on the product/engineering team, and then we are slowly but surely building out our sales team as well. I am on the sales team, just FYI. Again, it was founded by Hannah and Samir. And then importantly, in terms of where we are going, what does our traction look like? So we went into 2025 just shy of $1 billion assets under management. We went into 2026, so 1 year later, just shy of $4 billion, so we 4x'd in 1 year. We are already net of, or above, I should say, we are already about 5.3 billion AUM this year, so we're adding about $1 billion a quarter. And we are also doubling our client size, and we are also increasing the size of our clients. And so something worth mentioning, as it relates, unsurprisingly, because our founders were from First Republic, the early customers for Allocate were the people who would bank at First Republic, because that was what our network was. Slowly but surely, in the same way that GPs want to aggregate their vehicles and not have to deal with the smaller size checks, we are learning that the same methodology applies to us as well, which means that we're transitioning over to the boutique advisory firm. So really, our average LP, our average investor, is going to be a family office worth $100 million or more, or a boutique advisory firm that's roughly 1 billion to 100 billion AUM. So we're not necessarily servicing the Morgan Stanleys or the JP Morgans, although I'll leave it there. But we are dealing with the larger, again, wealth advisory boutique individuals. Ooh, all right, and that's it. So it was a pretty quick summary. If anybody would have any questions, I'm happy to answer as well, unless you want to hit pause.
No, you're good.
Okay, cool, yeah.
How many of you have ever looked at a system and thought, we have all of this data, so why aren't we using anything with it? That is the healthcare industry. So every day, healthcare organizations receive signals that somebody is at risk. Maybe they're overdue for a cancer screening. Maybe they're showing signs of early diabetes. Maybe they're enrolled in a clinical program, but they're likely to drop out before ever completing it. And the problem isn't that these signals don't exist. Healthcare has plenty of data. But the problem is that most of these systems still are fundamentally reactive. You know, we wait for somebody to get sick. We wait for them to miss the care that they need. We wait for them to show up in the ER with a symptom. And then we react. So I'm Steven. I lead engineering at RadiantGraph, and we think that that whole thing is backwards, right? So at RadiantGraph, we're working to move the healthcare from reactive to a proactive AI system. Instead of waiting for the bad outcomes to occur, we want healthcare organizations to identify the risk earlier, determine the right intervention, and take action before those outcomes happen. And to make proactive healthcare possible, we think you need to solve 3 problems. 1, context. 2, intelligence. And 3, action. The first challenge is context. And so healthcare data is fragmented across claims systems, clinical systems, pharmacy systems, a dozen other systems. Before you can help somebody complete a cancer screening or keep them engaged in a diabetes prevention program, you first have to understand what's actually happening with that individual. A major part of our platform is dedicated to building that foundation and creating a unified view of that member. But then context by itself isn't enough. Once you understand what's happening, the next challenge is the intelligence. What action should happen next? Suppose somebody is overdue for a cancer screening. Do we reach out to them today about that or next week? Should we send them a text message? Maybe make a phone call? Or maybe the best thing is to do nothing at all. But which of those members are most likely to benefit from outreach? Which interventions are most likely to work? That is where our machine learning, decisioning systems, and AI reasoning capabilities come together. We're not just trying to understand what's happening, we're trying to determine what should happen next. And so once you've identified the right person, you've identified the right intervention, you need a scalable way to act. And this is where agents start becoming interesting. We don't think about AI as a standalone feature of the product. We think about it as a way to help individuals navigate their healthcare journey more effectively. So sometimes that means helping somebody understand their eligibility for a diabetes prevention program. Sometimes it means answering questions about what benefits or services are available to them. Sometimes it means helping them complete the next step in healthcare journey that might otherwise stall out. One example of this is AI voice. So the challenge is that the system needs to understand who the person is, what we know about them, what programs they're eligible for, what's already happened, and also how to evolve that conversation based on their responses. In many ways, these agents become the interface between the intelligence of the platform and the individual we're trying to help. This is where the context that we've built, the decisions that we've made, are translated into real-world action. Of course, ultimately, none of this matters if it doesn't actually produce results. And so across our deployments, we've helped customers dramatically expand outreach capacity, improve their operational efficiency, and reduce costs while improving outcomes. So these are production systems delivering measurable results today. And ultimately, we believe the next generation of healthcare systems will be able to understand what's happening, determine what should happen next, and act proactively. And so that's what we're building at RadiantGraph. So if you're interested in AI agents, machine learning, data infrastructure, or just generally hard systems problems, I'd love to talk with you afterwards. Thank you.
The founder couldn't make it at the last minute, so I'm going to cover. I'm Matt Hoffman. I work at M13 with Mariah and Dizzy. I'm thrilled to be here. I'm going to talk to you a little about Mento. How many people in the room have worked with a coach, executive coach or performance coach, anything like that? Awesome. I am actually a certified executive coach myself. One of the interesting things when I work with clients or when I talk to other portfolio companies about coaching is they don't want some kind of traditional HR touchy-feely coach, which, by the way, that's me. They want someone who's kind of done the job before. And so what Mento has created is, what if we didn't just start with existing coaches? What if we started with people who've done the work before and train them to be coaches? So instead of working with just a regular coach, you actually work with an engineering leader or a product leader or a designer, someone who's done the job, been there, and is yet trained in all the coaching techniques to help them be valuable to you. So that's the difference in Mento. That's what they're building. They've created a performance coaching platform. What's interesting about them is that while their entire platform is AI-based, they use human coaches. And the AI is really to facilitate the coaching process, right? So it's not just typing into a chatbot to get coaching, which you could totally do. It works really fine. You actually get the human connection and the insight that humans can only get. But you use AI to facilitate the process. So it's to notice patterns, to create recognition. But their foundation is built on the power of human-to-human coaching. And what's really interesting about Mento, as you can see, is that their biggest clients are obviously some of the biggest frontier AI and LLM companies. So even companies that are foundationally built on AI are choosing to go to human coaching. And that's kind of the unique thing and one of the things we think is most interesting and certainly appreciative about Mento. So Mento is designed to go into organizations and help develop their leaders through coaching and through mentorship. That's where the name comes from. It's not the candy. It's actually helping people get mentorship, coaching skills that they couldn't get in-house because those skills don't live there or don't exist at that size. And so the coaches leverage their expertise, their earned experience as operators, always taking an operator-first approach, to help the leaders and adapt and perform. And you can see these are some of the things that they typically help people work through. A bunch of people saying, I'm not sure how to use AI. Well, there's a coach to that who's been that, right? I'm stepping into a new role. I've never done this before. I'm the senior most person on my team. I don't have anyone to ask. I'd love to learn from someone's experiences, right? And so they develop these programmatic approaches to helping people get better at their role. And it's all foundationally built on an AI platform. So it's not just kind of a coaching network. Mento is actually building really cutting edge technology to leverage AI to make the coaching process better. That encapsulates the experience, that makes it reusable around sessions, notices patterns over time, creates reminders in the moment. There's some really interesting technology under the hood, but it's all within the layer of working with humans directly, which is one of the things that make it so cool. And so when you think about kind of where work is going, and it's, that's certainly where I spend a lot of my time, a lot of things will be kind of automated and abstracted out. But coaching is one of the things that's harder to do. And so we really believe that this is something that has a real future, and certainly the business that they built would say that. This is where high signal work exists around driving performance, building connection, building relationships, and Mento is absolutely poised to create that platform. With the moment tool I talked about, there's always on hyper-personalized coaching, and here's where the technology comes in. Here's where you're building the cutting-edge technology that people can reuse with organizations and teams, support the individual, support the leader, support the coach to really drive change and improve human potential. They are hiring a ton of people on the engineering and product side. The team is led by Kevin Ball. I don't know if any of you follow his podcast, but he's an amazing leader. He's also a coach. I've worked him in that capacity. He's fantastic. This is a team that really believes in a human-centered culture and an amazing organization while still doing amazing cutting-edge coding work. Whoops. And you can see the jobs they're hiring. So they're hiring a number of jobs across the board on the data side, on AE side, PM side. It is an awesome organization, an amazing technology, amazing culture. If anyone's interested, I'd love to talk to more about it with you after the pitch. That's all I got. Thank you for listening.
Hi, everyone. Okay, cool. So I'm Tim, co-founder, CTO of Baselayer. A little bit about myself, background in machine learning AI for over a decade now. Previously, I actually built a computer vision startup that was acquired by Snapchat in 2020. But as you actually can see from the type of companies we have tonight, I think some of the more interesting spaces in this day and age are what you'd call like high compliance industries. This includes healthcare, financial services, et cetera, et cetera. And we are solidly situated kind of in the slightly more fintech domain. We are fundamentally an identity company. Specifically, we focus on business identity. And why is business identity important? Because if you're a small business owner in America, don't have the privilege of being a venture-backed startup, you start your business and first thing you need is often a loan, a line of credit, starting a restaurant, starting a transportation trucking company, starting a bodega, whatever it might be. If you fail to acquire a loan on behalf of your business using your business identity, banks fall back to your identity. You as the owner, you as the customer, you as the consumer. That means, should your business go bankrupt, you are personally liable for that loan. Obviously, that's bad for a variety of reasons, but one of the main problems with that is, in my opinion, it reduces the willingness to take risks for people in America. We have the privilege, people who are running, working at startups, if our business goes under, we can just walk away. We can do something else. It's not going to hit our personal line of credit. And this is why this question of business identity is very important, because banks want to underwrite your business. They don't want to have to underwrite you as a consumer, but they end up having to underwrite you as a customer and as a consumer because there is not sufficient data and sufficient models to determine how risky a business is. Businesses have no canonical identity layer. This kind of gets into why businesses, especially in the United States, are extremely fragmented. Compared to you as an individual, if you're especially green card, American citizen, you have a social security number. Doesn't matter if you live in California, doesn't matter if you live in New York, you're the same person. Businesses, on the other hand, are governed exclusively on a state-by-state level. You're either a Delaware C Corp, if you're a startup. You're a California LLC. You're a Texas LP. And this leads to a very fragmented ecosystem where you have 51 jurisdictions, including Washington, D.C., of where businesses can be registered. So first problem we had to solve was how do we acquire all this data, establish relationships with every jurisdiction in the United States, including also the federal government, and come up with our identity graph, entity resolution graph. So that's been problem number one. With Baselayer today, we are able to effectively replace 5 vendors and produce risk decisions in seconds. And we currently includes data from government sources, Secretary of State. We have every litigation, lawsuit, bankruptcy record of every business in America. We can tell you their industry profile, liens on the business, and a bunch of data that we acquire from online. And we roll that all up into our Baselayer business profile. There's about 8,000 chartered financial institutions in the United States, about 4,000 banks, 4,000 credit unions. 2,300 of those use Baselayer today, so just over a quarter of all financial institutions in the United States use Baselayer today. And then this leads into what's next, right? We all think about agentic commerce and the agentic economy and what's coming there. And the question there's really 2 sides of the equation. And one of them, the one that we aim to tackle, is this question of if agents are going to be your first-party representative everywhere on the web, how does anyone know that that agent actually represents you? And that could be you as a consumer or you as a business. It's a question of delegated identity and a question of delegated authority. Think about how agents work today. Obviously, an agent is a series of chained LLM calls. But when an agent's actually interacting with the web, there's effectively 2 ways of doing it. It's either making API requests, if it's fortunate enough to do that, or it's using some sort of headless Chromium browser, right? And all of the traditional methods of identity on the internet fall apart, right? There's really 2 ways to identify you on the internet when you go browse a website. Either there's a deterministic logged in experience, or there's probabilistic, which is kind of known as browser fingerprinting. Because AI agents are effectively ephemeral and inherently ephemeral, this problem of browser fingerprinting falls apart. I spent my early career working on browser fingerprinting. For those in the know, it's a question of IP addresses. It's the question of what extensions do you have installed in your browser? What fonts do you have installed in your browser? Have I seen this browser before? If every single time your agent visits a site, there's a brand new Chromium instance that's fresh, there's no probabilistic fingerprint to find. There's nothing to see there. And then it's this question of deterministic identity as well. How do you provide a logged-in experience? And this is the question we're working with merchants today who want to offer agentic shopping experiences. The problem that they're facing is a problem of how do I offer my customer a logged-in experience? I don't want to offer this experience of a guest checkout, right? I want to know who they are. That's a question of risk, it's a question of liability, but more importantly, it's a question of establishing a customer relationship. Let's say I'm Wayfair.com. I sell furniture. I want to know, are you the type of person who's furnishing a living room, furnishing a dining room, have just moved somewhere, and are furnishing an entire house? If you have a logged-in customer, you can look at their cart analytics. You can understand what they're searching for, what their behavior is. If you have the guest checkout experience, you really have no information session to session other than this is a transaction that I have received. So the 2 sides, I mentioned the 2 sides of these kind of agentic commerce questions are, there's one side which is the question of payment intent, the question of how do you solve that part. That's not what we're focused on. That's very much a focus of Stripe, a focus of Visa, companies like that. That's the question of, okay, does it have a valid payment method? We obviously don't want to be providing our agents with our raw credit card numbers for a variety of reasons. very risky, liable for exfiltration attacks, despite the fact that people are doing that with OpenClaw. And then so that's one side, right, is the payment. And then there's the question of, well, again, who is it, right? Think of, as you think these things through, you need to always trace these things back to what happens when there's a dispute. Because as soon as you talk to Visa, as soon as you talk to Wayfair, that's what they're thinking about. What if something goes wrong? What if we're not on the happy path here? What are people going to say? They're going to say, well, my agent didn't buy what I told it to buy. It bought something else. Or that wasn't my agent. That didn't represent me. So how do you create a series of deterministic, cryptographically signed attestations that say with confidence that this agent is indeed my representative, and how do you maintain audit trails so that in the instance of a dispute, people can go back and see, actually, yes, that was indeed your agent, and it was indeed authorized to perform that transaction. So this is effectively what we're building next. We're calling this the identity infrastructure for the agentic economy. And it's a whole new set of principles and primitives that need to be built. And it's very exciting. So that is a short form version. The summary in total is Baselayer has a lot of customers today, mostly financial institutions, insurance companies, companies like Uber Eats and DoorDash use us today to verify businesses. DoorDash and Uber Eats have a big problem with ghost kitchens. And we're building towards this future of agentic commerce and agentic identity for customers that want to accept agentic payments, for customers that want to be a part of this agentic economy and agentic ecosystem that's coming. This is our recruiter, Kyle. He leads up our talent acquisition team. This is a QR code for our page. We're hiring across all roles right now. We also just closed our Series A in April. And we're hiring across engineering, product, solutions, partnerships, AEs, BDRs, really everything. And if you're good and this sounds interesting, we would love to have you on board. Thank you.